Welcome to another exciting edition of the Step Out with Oscar Bimpong. And tonight is another powerful show that we are bringing to you all the way from London. And for those that don't know, the Step Out with Oscar Bimpong is where we interview experts, we interview consultants, we interview talented people and people doing exceptional work in their communities. And tonight is no exception. Now, before I go on to my guest, I would like to do some few mentions of our sponsors, and that is Train to Inspire Consultancy. That is your business training and consulting firm. That is for all SMEs and corporate entities. They also work with schools in second cycle, colleges and universities in terms of the personal development of students. Also, ALS Global Shipping and Logistics, your trusted import and export company based in Accra. ALS says if you are stranded at the port, call them and they will sort you out. Also, ZPay Ghana Limited, your remittance and mobile money company based in Ghana. They just launched their ZPay mobile money USSD code, which is *270#. Just dial it on your phone and register for ZPay. Then Wheels for Sure, your car leasing for every credit. Wheels for Sure says it doesn't matter your credit, you can drive out of the garage with a car of your choice. When you call Wheels for Sure based in the UK, just quote T2I 2020 and they are going to sort you out. If you want to contact any of our sponsors, their numbers are scrolling on the screen. Take it and contact them. I always say if you tell them you got the number from T2I TV UK, you are more likely to get a very good deal. Also, if you want to sponsor any of our programs, you can take the number for T2I TV UK or Train to Inspire Consultancy. Also, if you want to support what we are doing, you can support us because what we want to do is to take this to the four corners of the African continent and also to the world and all our Black people in diaspora. This is our CNN. And as a startup, we will need all the support from you. We can only do this with your support. We can really push the agenda, build a strategy, but the support can also come from you. And we want to thank everybody that have supported it all these years, especially with Train to Inspire Consultancy, in which this is being built out of to educate the people on the continent of Africa and in diaspora and anyone that cares to learn. And this is where we are, but we need a lot of support and resources to drive this agenda to a level where we can make more impact and also support our communities. So if you are watching us and you have got any form of support for us, you are more than welcome to really discuss with us. You can take the number for T2I TV UK or Train to Inspire Consultancy, and we will take it from there. Now, first, we would like to apologize for coming late because we had a bit of technical hitch behind the scenes. That is why we are a bit late, but we really want to apologize to all our supporters, our fans. I know some people were even WhatsApping me that what is going on. They haven't got any alerts and we are not live. So please forgive us for that. And but we are live. So if you are watching us, we will encourage you to share this for somebody to have an opportunity to really watch this powerful segment that we are going to have. And who do we have on the hot seat? This man is a multiple award winner. He is a real retail multi-asset fund manager. He is an advisor to the board of City Hive Limited, and he's involved in different diversity projects in London. And who is this person that I'm talking about? He is in the person of Justin Onuekwusi. Please welcome to Step Out with Oscar Bimpong, and you are live on T2I TV UK.
Thank you, Oscar. How are you doing?
Good. And yourself? How has your day been?
It's been good. It's been good. We're all in lockdown, as you know, but tier 4 or whatever the tier is in London now, but we're not allowed to go anywhere. That's what I know. So just spending time with the family and enjoying that.
Yes. I always say that we are locked down, but we are not down. So
Yes.
we still have to thrive and do what is necessary for us to survive better and thrive, so that when coronavirus is over, we will be out there to launch ourselves to the world and even more better. Yes. Now,
I agree.
our topic for discussion is quite interesting, and I had people even contacting me saying that, look, I will join this. Some people have got businesses and they are looking at how their staff can even move up the ladder in terms of the corporate structure.
Mm,
And it's quite an interesting topic. Now, our topic for discussion is, what can we do to have a better representation in our workplaces as Black people?
mm.
Now, before you go on to that, I would like you, in your own words, who is Justin Onukwusi in your own words?
Okay, so it's a very big question, actually, very broad question. So I suppose I am an investor.
Mm,
I am dedicated to driving social change, and in addition to that, I'm a family man. So let's go into each one of those. Investor, what does that mean? I'm a fund manager. I manage money
mm,
on behalf of financial advisors. They typically give me money. I invest it in markets. I'm a multi-asset fund manager, so I invest not only in equities, so shares, bonds, property, commodities, spread the risk over lots and lots of different assets. I manage around about £6 billion
mm,
in a team of that managed around £60 billion. One of the largest teams in the UK, one of the largest fund managers in the world, at least general investment management. So that's the investor side. Then you move on to the side of change. I sit on the board of a number of different businesses, all looking to drive diversity. I'm also a co-founder of a movement called Talk About Black, which looks to drive greater representation of Black people at senior levels in the investment industry and beyond. But I suppose my mission is really to drive societal change to create a level playing field for all people, not only for Black people, but for all people. And in order to do that, there are a lot of different initiatives, a lot of different things that you can do. I believe that the position that I'm in, I have a lot of privileges. It's important that I really try and give other people the platform to have those same privileges. And then finally, family man, it's not isn't this probably the most important. I'm dedicated to my daughters, my wife, my mum. I believe that one of the things, probably creating societal change, I can't create change within
mm.
my own family.
Exactly.
So that's something really important.
Exactly. All right. All right. Now, let's start from the genesis. That is from the beginning, and that is, I want to talk
Mm,
to us about your upbringing and the journey to start of your career in the
mm,
city of London.
mm. Yeah, so I grew up in Manchester, inner city Manchester, in I'd call it quite a deprived area of inner city Manchester at the time. It probably still is. An area called Cheetham. And what I would say is, during the 80s, the Cheetham area, during the 80s, I'd say that around that area were enclaves of National Front, and the National Front was just dying off in those areas. The British National Party and Front National in France. But as you got into the 90s, sorry, as I got older, the there was I suppose, a gang warfare brewing between Cheetham Hill and Woodside at the time. Yeah, that was just the environment that I grew up in. I was very lucky to have a group of really uh, good friends who were all focused on education in, let's say, in an area where it was quite hard to do that, and we all kind of stayed together in quite a close click, and it allowed us to progress from an education. Um, so that was my upbringing. Single parent family, with my mum and my brother. My mum was very hard working. But early 90s, my house got repossessed. It meant that yeah, the house got repossessed in the 1998. Yeah, so I was we lived in temporary accommodation at the time, got evicted from the house we're in. So lots and lots of challenges there. But what my mum taught me was, you know, perseverance, resilience, and how education is vitally important. She was a teacher, so it was very early on in order to increase your sort of ability in education was necessary key.
Mm.
I did well at school, and that benefited me, and particularly in maths. And that I finished in maths is what drove me to the city eventually.
Mm. Mm. Wow. So you made one statement, and that was you were living in a deprived community. So
Mm.
what did you see that made you see things differently? Because I can bet you, if you go back to that deprived community, a lot of people will be staying in the same circle, the same mindset. The struggle continues. But you, in quote, I can say that you have broken yourself from that norm,
Yeah,
and now you are on a different pedestal. What did you see
yeah.
differently that made you to really break out?
So there's a few things. I think it's probably unfair for me to say deprived. What I really meant was not very affluent. And I think there's a big difference there because the people there probably people see themselves as deprived, but they probably see themselves as not affluent. There's a big difference. So I think that the it's very difficult when you're in that environment to break out of it. The one thing that helped me to break out of it personally was education and understanding the importance of education. That's the first point.
Mm.
That was, I was pretty much a straight A student. It's very rare for somebody, first of all, somebody in my school to be a straight A student, number one, but also um, somebody from an affluent area to be a straight A student. The other thing I think, which definitely my mum taught me, was this working hard.
Mhm.
And actually, when you work hard, the rewards don't necessarily come straight away,
Mhm.
but they will come eventually. And that stayed with me the whole of my life. And the last point is the issue of resilience.
Mm.
And this is often overlooked, but I think if you are further down the social mobility scale, this resilience is even more important because seeing my mum at times struggle and bounce back, always be happy, always think of her children, always think about progressing. That to me, again, has stayed with me. And it means that every time I'm on a journey where I've had setbacks, I've had lots and lots of setbacks, more than you can even count. But the important was not how hard you fall, it's how quickly you get back up.
Mm. Wow. It's not how quickly you get back up, but most of the times when people fall, they want to stay falling. So
Mm.
did you have some role models? I guess it was your mother that was really your role model. And do you had other role models that really impacted your life?
Yeah. The main role model, and I think everybody else in that journey has been secondary.
Mm.
Don't get me wrong, I had some great I had aunties who were like older to me at times. So I'd go and stay at my auntie's. I remember my mum went to London to work,
Mm.
and I had to stay at my auntie who was effectively 8 months until my mum came back to
Mm.
Manchester. So I had a good, strong family unit around me, which was really important. My grandmother, every Saturday we'd go to my grandmother's house. All of my aunties, all of my cousins would congregate there. So that's been quite important. But ultimately, the role model, ultimate role model to me was when I got into the workplace. That was slightly different because if you think about my mother was a teacher, but she wasn't used to that professional setting.
Mhm.
So, but what I've been able to do, or what I realised very early, in order to progress in the workplace, it wasn't just about working hard on your job, on the hard skills of your job, the technical part of your job. It's also about working hard on building relationships, and this is where a lot of people they kind of get a little bit confused. They wonder why they're not progressing, and even though they're working hard, actually working hard on building meaningful relationships with people is almost equally as important as doing well the technical side of your job. Why? Because ultimately, people do not promote you if they don't like you. You know, let's be honest. People don't promote you if they don't like you.
Mm-hmm.
To actually be likable and building relationships with people. Going back to your role models, you know, people that are managers who are still taught this day at Merrill Lynch, at Aon, at Aviva Investors, and I've got a great relationship with my current boss there, legal and general investment. They have all been mentored along the way. And finally, over the last few years, I've met a group of people who've helped form Talk About Black, which I say is a movement designed and built to create more in beyond. All of those people who've been driving that agenda are all role models to me as well. Ultimately, I want to create a platform for me to progress to achieve the ultimate goal.
Wow. Talk to me about what Talk About Black is all about.
Yeah, so the diversity project was set up about 4 or 5 years ago. Of course, the diversity project is a organisation which brings together different companies in the savings and investment industry to try and drive greater diversity within that industry. And it's split into different segments, so different work streams. So you've got gender work stream, disability work stream, LGBT work stream, and an ethnicity work stream. And it's within that ethnicity work stream that Talk About Black was effectively born. And essentially what we did is we looked at representation of ethnic minorities within the asset management industry. And we quickly realized the big challenge was Black people at senior level. That's where the underrepresentation was. So, and this is all that so what we felt is, what were the big challenges that stopped the talent flowing through? We identified lots of different challenges. One of the key challenges was that people found it very difficult to talk about ethnicity. They found it very difficult to talk about ethnicity. So we had to try and normalize the conversation around talking about ethnicity, talking about race in our industry in order to get the conversation even on the agenda. So that's what Talk About Black. Hashtag designed to create a platform to have discussions about ethnicity. But within that, there are lots of different initiatives that we built to try and rethink that whole fight, that stop the talent from flowing through.
Wow, that's quite interesting. We're going to go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, we are going to continue our discussion. So please don't change the dial. We're coming back very soon. All right, so we are back and we are talking about how we can have a good representation of Black people in the corporate world. Um, Now, what are some of the challenges that you have faced in relation to um, your trying to really change the narrative in terms of Black people really going up the ladder in the corporate world?
I think the first thing is really trying to understand why it is that you're not seeing Black people at senior levels. And I think one of the biggest challenges that companies face is they target very narrow initiatives, but actually, this challenge is really quite broad. So, what we try to do is articulate this by an analogy, the kinks in the hose pipe. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but essentially, if you think about kinks in a hose pipe, those kinks stop the water from going through. The more kinks you have, the less water comes through the end of the hose pipe.
Mm.
So we've identified 5 kinks. The first one is taboo. I've already spoken about that people are uncomfortable talking about ethnicity or race, because if you get it wrong, then the downside is really significant. We've seen that with the chair of the FA. We've seen that with, I don't know, Danny Baker. We've seen it with, a number of different people in the limelight getting ethnicity wrong and effectively paying for that. But there are 4 other kinks as well: community, pipeline, entry, and progression. So let's start with community.
Mm-hmm.
So with British-born Black people, they tend to be further down the social mobility scale on average than the average white person. How does that manifest itself in outcomes? It means that they're more prone to, they're more likely to be a victim of violent crime. They're more likely to be kind of stopped and searched. They're more likely to not own their own home. That all has significant challenges when you're thinking about progression.
Mm-hmm.
So that's community. Then you come on to pipeline. And the challenge is that social mobility aspect ends up feeding through when you get into education. So if you think about when you're 5 years old and you start school, the attainment of the average Black person, the average white person, and different ethnicities, they all tend to be equal. But as you go through the school system, what tends to happen is that certain ethnicities start to fall behind, in particular, Black Caribbean boys. But, and that in itself, kind of at the end of education means the average Black person is falling behind the average white person in terms of educational attainment. And of course, there's things like, biases in schools, Black boys in particular being more prone to being suspended and expelled and excluded from school for similar offences that other people get a let off for. But that's pipeline. Then you come on to entry level. So even when Black people are getting the right grades, getting the top grades, it's still very difficult for them to get those top jobs in the investment industry, in the law industry, in investment banking, etc., etc.
So
Why?
what is actually the case? Because if the person is brilliant, then it is about their decision, or it is the battle lies on their hands to get the right jobs, isn't it? Or do you think there are biases behind the scenes?
No. Being brilliant isn't enough.
Okay.
You have to know how to talk. You have to have the right networks. If you haven't had, if your parents haven't been in that professional setting before, you're already behind. But the evidence that we have is that when people go to assessment centres, when people are going to assessment centres doing group exercises and interviewing and so on and so forth, that being able to articulate themselves in the language that is necessary of say investment banking or investment management is a particular language that actually you need to be exposed to before you before you can talk that way. And then finally, the actual biggest one I think is progression. Is that when people get into the workplace, this is the fourth kink. When people get into the workplace, they're not progressing at the same speed as other ethnicities, in particular, white people and white males.
So can we say they are not working hard? Sorry for cutting you short, but
no,
sometimes I want to. Can we say they are not working hard? Can we say black people have got attitude at the workplace? And can it be that reason?
So there's a number of challenges. First of all, that there are. So I run mentoring circles every month for people who are just starting in the industry, trying to help them navigate the workplace. And one of the biggest challenge, I think, is the culture of our workplaces aren't set up to embrace people that are different.
Okay.
So let me try and explain. So everybody, when they go into the workplace, has to adapt. Yeah, they have to adapt. They have to change the way they speak, change the way they look, etc., etc. Wear a tie, wear a shirt, all this kind of stuff, which you wouldn't normally do at home. But the key is the more different you are, the harder it is to adapt to a particular culture. So, for example, one thing that I experienced and a lot of black people experience this when they come into the city is there is socials tend to be centered around going to the pub, and that to me was completely alien to me, given growing up in Cheetham Hill. My uncles, my aunties, none of my family, my extended family, none of them went to the pub as a pastime. So learning how to do that was a real experience for me. One of the things I used to do, for example, is when people used to go, I either used to try and make excuses, or I used to go really late because I knew that a lot of people would have gone home, etc., etc. But it's things like this that that you struggle to build relationships that allow you to progress in the workplace unless you kind of meet people halfway. And that's the first point. But I think what companies are realizing actually is that if you have a culture that's over here and you say everybody has to adapt to it, then the challenges are the people who are most different at the end of the spectrum. They're likely to think, after 5, 6, 7 years, I've had enough of this because this is too alien for me, and I'm leaving, I'm quitting, and that's what tends to happen. But companies are starting to realize they have to change their culture. They have to embrace other people of different cultures in order to allow other people to progress. I think that's a big difference that we're noticing over the last few years. And the last point I'd stress is there are lots of microaggressions in the workplace. A microaggression might be, they're actually alone. They can be quite innocent. It might be saying, to a black woman, touching her hair, touching a black woman's hair, and it'd be like, well, if that happens though by 50 different people over the course of a year, of course that black woman's going to feel uncomfortable coming into work, particularly if she's changed her hair to fit into the workplace. So these kind of microaggressions, after a while, they build up and they become structural, and they really affect people. So this is why I think as black people, we need to network within a group and help each other and help people who are facing these microaggressions and this negativity in the workplace to get through it. Because once you get through it, then actually you can progress, and the sky is really the limit.
Because this is quite interesting, and it is quite, because I've been discussing with a lot of friends, and I'm like, a black person can stay in a job for 5 years and they will not have promotion. A white person, so let's say we work at the grocery shop, we are all working at the till. In 5 years, the black person will still at the tail, and the white person will become a team leader, supervisor, or maybe a manager in 5 years. And I ask myself, so if the black person is equally working hard, what is preventing them for them also not to progress in 5 years?
Yeah.
And I think this is very challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, it's extremely challenging, because I know people who so there's other things as well, right? So, I spoke about building meaningful relationships, but of course it's harder for a black person who is already maybe the only black person in their team to build those meaningful relationships, right? It's harder because naturally there's a natural affinity, and there's lots of studies around on this. There's a natural affinity of people to network with people that they have similarities to.
Yeah, they are used.
It's a natural thing that happens, right? If for example, I know that relative to almost everybody in my workplace who is not black, I've got a lot more black friends, right? I mean, that's just a reality. So it is harder for a black person to do this, and I do think companies need to adapt. But also, building those meaningful relationships, particularly with senior people, are really important. So one of the things that when I mentor people, I try and help them to build relationships with their manager, with their senior manager, because these things are really important if you're going to progress. It frightens me at times when I speak to junior people and I say to them, what is the vision of your manager's manager? What do they believe? What do they think? They don't know. So I'm like, well, what are you working towards? What's your vision? And is your vision aligned with their vision? And these kind of conversations are really important. And actually, all you sometimes need is a nudge from someone more senior, a mentor, a role model that can help you and understand and navigate these businesses.
But don't you think it's a bit difficult for as a junior staff to really get to the level of building a relationship with your manager's manager? Because you see, there is one thing that I have seen, that sometimes your manager even creates a barrier for you not getting to the next stage of meeting their manager.
Yeah, but to me, that's because you haven't built a relationship with your manager. Okay. Obviously, you can't go in day one and say, I want to speak to him and him. You need to let those relationships foster. But don't get me wrong. The onus isn't just on the individual. The onus is also on the companies to break down some of these structural hurdles in order for people to progress. So whilst I focus on the people in the business, I'm also working with companies to say, okay, you need to change. You need to embrace different cultures. You need to be aware of these microaggressions, because that's vitally important as well. But let's be honest. I can make significant progress with a company, but still, in order to get progression, that's going to take a generation. It's going to take a generation to break down structural barriers. So right now, one thing you also have to do is work with people from the bottom up perspective and say, what can you do in yourself to progress your career?
Because you made mention of similar races really aligning themselves together easily than really integrating with other races. And one thing I found is that I always see this from the perspective of the dining room of a company. And one of the things I always observe is that when you go to the dining room, especially lunchtime, you will see that black people have really, they are really eating on one side, Asians on one side, and white people on one side. And I believe this is the true definition of those barriers. So psychologically, it looks like they cannot even integrate. Like, for example, Asian food are spicy. Some people don't feel like I want to sit in white people and eat this food. And some of these things are the barriers that we really want to. But do you really think the leadership of companies are really aware of what you are discussing now?
If you asked me this 3 years ago, I would say they were completely oblivious to it. But I think what's happened over the last few years, I'm probably driven by the gender movement, to be honest with you. You know, if you look at law firms, investment firms, as much as they've got a problem with the black people at senior level, they've got a real challenge with gender as well. And what the gender movement has done, things like the 30% club, trying to get 30% of women on boards, what he's done, it's really uncovered a lot of these microaggressions. I think that was inspired by the Me Too movement, to be honest with you. I think that's where the gender movement really started to pick up momentum. So what that's done is created a platform. It's created a platform to discuss diversity more broadly. Don't get me wrong, I do think that the gender movement has been quite, in some areas, quite narrow and alienated effectively black women a lot. That's the feedback I get. But what it has done, importantly, is created a platform for almost a methodology, a process of driving change throughout business. So I do think businesses now are very aware of this, particularly after 2020 with George Floyd. I think that's opened a lot of businesses' eyes to the challenges that they have responsibility to remove in order to create a fair, level playing field for all.
Wow. There is work to be done, isn't it? But I'm really worried. I'm really worried that we are having this discussion in 2021. I believe we should have moved on and we should have been in a better place by now. But it looks like we are still far behind, isn't it?
Yes. I think there's lots of work to be done. So out of thousands, I'm a fund manager, right? So I am on the investment floor of my business. That's effectively at the front of my business, managing money in order to generate return in the markets. There are only a report came out in 2017 saying out of thousands of black fund managers in the City of London, so out of thousands of fund managers in the City of London, only 12 were black. You know, that is frightening. You know, less than 1% of all fund managers were black. So, you know, there's clearly lots of work to be done because, you know, even just getting to 1% isn't enough. We have to have true representation in our businesses if they are to progress. And all the reports say having more diverse teams, having more culturally aware teams, it leads to better business results. So I do think companies are opening their eyes and are looking to drive change. But, you know, realistically, it takes time to chip away at these structural barriers. But I do have confidence that the leaders in our industry and the leaders across different industries will be those companies that address this the quickest way and the most effective way.
So, for example, you made example of fund managers at the City. I think it's even worse in football, where we see a lot of young black people doing exceptionally well, but when they finish, their counterparts as white people get into managerial position quite easily. They get into the FA quite easily, and they progress their career. So I think this is across board, and that makes it so frightening. Like, let's look at the era of Frank Lampard and Gerrard. All their generation, they are into management now. But where are their black counterparts? But these black counterparts have also done their coaching badges and everything. But where are the opportunities? Now, do you think we ourselves are not pushing further? Are we really resting so much as black people? And can we do better than what is happening by pushing ourselves out there?
So I think we can definitely, or black people can definitely push harder. but there is something that, you know, that just proves the playing field isn't level. If you're saying to me black people need to push even harder, I mean, that proves that, you know, they have to push harder just to get on a level playing field. And that to me is frightening. I do think football has structural challenges, given that actually when you look at the players, is it like 30% now of the players are ethnic minorities, black or ethnic minorities. So it's frightening that you've got so few black managers. But it's even more frightening that when you look at the top of the football ladder in the FA, in, you know, big football clubs, you go to those boardrooms, again, you know, there's just a scarcity of ethnic minorities and a scarcity of black people. So I think that is frightening, and I think that it's a very similar, as you say, very similar argument to all professional services. That when you get to those top echelons, CEO, C-suite, in the boardroom, there is simply a number of there's simply a glass ceiling. There's a glass ceiling that ethnic minorities, and particular black people, just don't seem to be able to smash through.
Now let me. So this is like, let's say we are talking on the basis of UK, where black people are not able to get to where they have to be when it comes to the corporate life. Now the same structure when we take it to Africa. Now, for example, let's look at the World Cup, right? You could see that maybe about 70 or 50% of the managers of the national teams of African countries that comes to the World Cup are white people. Meaning that we ourselves, even on the continent, don't even believe in our own people. So we give opportunities to the people that are not giving us opportunities in their country. Now, this makes it very complicated for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that my honest view is that I think that the manager of a national team should be the nationality of the nation. I think you should have, you know, your nation's players and your nation's managers and coaching team. But that, you know, maybe that's an incorrect view. You know,
but can you imagine that even if they give an opportunity to the native to really run the national team, they are more likely to get about 30 to 40% of the salary of the white person.
Yeah, that's
it sounds to me that we ourselves are living in a complex psychological structure. In my own, I'm calling it a complex psychological structure. That it looks like we don't believe in ourselves. It looks like we don't think we can do it. There is an underlying problems that I think we should solve. And I think when that is solved, then I think we can really move up. And I think that I think, don't you think mindset is the main issue?
So I think it's very easy to look at a non-level playing field and say you need to work harder, you need to change your mindset, without fully understanding privilege and what privilege gives you. And privilege is in place due to structural, historical context, right? Yeah. So take into account, you've got to take into account slavery, you've got to take into account civil rights, you've got to take into account all of these barriers that have created this uneven playing field. And once you take all of that into consideration, it's not just about mindset. To me, it's about trying to remove some of those structural barriers that have been in place for years. And it's only when we do that, when everybody everybody's working side by side, all ethnicities, to try and break down these structural barriers, that you're really going to get change. It can't just be down to the individuals, because that's why you only have 12 black fund managers in the city, because it's those individuals that are trying, that are trying so hard to drive their careers. It also needs to be about. Also, are you telling me that of all the aspiring fund managers, there's only 12 that are working hard? No, it's not. There's only 12 that have got the right mindset. No, it's not. It's about structural barriers that we need to overcome and need to understand. And it's only once we do that do we truly create the true representation across all. And you're right, not just the investment industry, but over all industries.
Now, what is the way forward?
So, I mean, I think it's looking at this holistically, as I say, trying to unkink that hose pipe overall. So in the investment industry, there's been a number of initiatives. One such one is an after-school program. So Talk About Black has set up this after-school program to go out into industries, teach people, go into more non-affluent areas, teach people about managing their money first and foremost. What's a mortgage? How do you generate decent returns? What's a savings account, etc., etc. Also teaching them softer skills. Being able to speak in front of a room of people, being able to network, things like that, which are really important once you get into industry. And that program, after school program, also allows, when lockdown is finished, will allow those school children to come into the city and get experience of that. Another initiative we have is annual student event for university students who have told us, they told us that they didn't know about the investment industry. So that tells you just how important networks are and how important knowing people in industry is. They didn't know about it. But also they say we wouldn't join the investment industry because when we look at the investment industry, we see people that don't look like us there. So you won't see any role models. So why on earth would we do that to ourselves, right? So by connecting that black talent to the black leaders in the industry, that's really important. You're connecting people to role models. We've got a number of mentoring programs, but I mentioned the one at junior level, but we've also got one at senior level for people like me. I'm part of this one where I get mentored by people in the C-suite, CEOs. I'm being mentored by the chair of one of the largest asset managers in the country. Then finally, it's having events where we normalize this conversation. We talk about ethnicity. One such event we had, Viv Anderson, the first black player to be capped by England, talking about his experiences, inspiring people. We had Afua Hirsch telling us about her journey throughout her journey to where she is now, and how she got to write a book and become such an esteemed activist. So there are having those black people to inspire everybody is really important, but normalizing the conversation as well of the Talk About Black membership. 1,005, we typically get 1,500 people in every event that we do when we do them virtually. 50% of them are non-black, right? So we're connecting with people who aren't black. So I think those kind of initiatives are making a difference, but we have to be honest. We have to be honest and say this is going to take a generation to make that change. But we have to chip away at it, because if we don't chip away at it, then the world will continue to be unfair for our children and our children's children.
Wow. Because I really agree with you, and I think these are some of the works that we need to do. I interviewed 2 young medical doctors. That was last year, and they've got similar initiative. And the 2 young black girls, and I had a very amazing discussion with them, and they are trying to really encourage young black children from deprived communities for them to enter into medicine. because they believe that if they can see their skin color over there, then it doesn't make no news to them. Meaning that if they've been able to cross that barrier from being a deprived community and entering into a medical school, then anybody at all can do it. So what they do is that they assist them with their interviews, they assist them with their application process. And I think this is what we need in the Black community. And trust me, I think we're really doing a good job, because a lot of young people might say, look, the city is not for me. But if they see what you are doing and really trying to let them understand that it can be done, that is the first step of breaking any barrier. And with that, but one thing I've seen is that a lot of Black people that really gets to the top sometimes don't come back and give back to the deprived communities. And so they lack a lot of role models. They cannot see people that they can connect to that on a different level. And I think these are some of the works we need to do. Only me and you cannot do it. So we need to conscientize a lot of Black people in different areas and aspects of our life for them to also start initiatives like this. Because the point is that you might never know who you are impacting. And I always say that if one person changes their mind or they start believing, it is not only one person anymore, it becomes generational. And that means we are targeting that one person that is ready to believe that it can be done. And the moment they start believing, it's not only one person, it becomes generational, because that belief is going to be instilled in their children's children. And that is where the impact is. So we are not really even impacting one person anymore. And if we have got that one mindset, we are never going to give up, because it is about that one person that we want to really change. And if that is done, then we can scale it over time to make that more impact. So I believe you are making a very good job. And I always want to encourage people that, look, we want to see the next 10 years, the next 20, 30 years, our children having the boldness, breaking these barriers, re-conscientizing the other people of the spectrum for them to also believe. Because trust me, believe you me, if somebody sees me as an African with my accent, psychologically what comes into their mind is there is nothing to write about me. I remember I used to work in a place and there was a health and safety problem, and they said we should write a report about the problem because I need to be disciplined. So I saw one white guy coming to me telling me that, look, can I write it for you? And I started laughing in my head, because the person you are talking to is a degree holder, you know? And when I wrote my report, they didn't have no option than to really stop the whole procedure about this discipline. Because the way I wrote it, they realized that if they want to put this further, they are going to be at fault. And I believe that, so from that time, they started seeing me differently. And this is what we really need to portray, that we can do it. Sometimes I think we hide so much. Sometimes we really build a wall around us. Sometimes we go back to our shell like the snail, trying to mind our own business. And because of that, when promotion comes, though we are doing the work very well, but we are not integrating into the structure of the organization. And because of that, it goes to other parties. So I believe that we need to be open-minded. Racism is still there. There is the likelihood that we will still not be promoted, but we still to have an open mind. Go out there and integrate. Like you gave an example of going to the pub. I've seen a lot of Black people that will never go to the pub, thinking that no, that's not important. But you see, that is where you really build relationship beyond the corporate structure. And that is where over time, because you see, apart from you working hard, promotion, there is about 30% of relationship that is attached to promotion. So if you don't have any relationship with your bosses or your supervisors, then how can you progress? So I think this conversation, I love it so much, because our people need to understand that, look, we can all get there. Nobody is smarter than us. We have got the knowledge, but it looks like the soft skills that we need to really survive in the marketplace, we are not really integrating that one very well. And I think if we can do that, it's still difficult, but one day we'll break the barrier so that our children will have it easy. And that is how this country were born. The forefathers worked hard, and today's generation are not working so much hard, but they are getting the results that they need. So, Mr. Justin, it's been nice having you. I've really enjoyed every bit of this discussion. We had so much challenges coming live, but at the end of the day, we've been able to overcome to be here. So thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Right. Before I go, I just want to mention some few sponsors. This program is sponsored by Train to Inspire Consultancy. That is your business training and consulting firm. They work with students in terms of their personal development as well. And also ALS Global Shipping and Logistics, your trusted import and export company based in Accra. ALS says it doesn't matter what you are facing at the port. Call them and they will sort you out. Also, ZPay Ghana Limited, your remittance and mobile money company based in Ghana. They just launched their USSD code, and that is *270#. Just dial it on your phone and register for ZPay mobile money. The Wheels for Sure, your car leasing for every credit. Wheels for Sure says it doesn't matter your credit, you can drive out of the garage with a car of your choice. Wheels for Sure is based in the UK. When you call them, quote T2Y 2020, and they are going to really give you a good deal. Once again, thank you for your time. Your last word to anyone that is watching us, please.
I think it's really important that whatever workplace you're in, to build those meaningful relationships with your peers and your people around you. I also think it's really important to continue to be resilient. Find a mentor or a sponsor that can help you at times of stress. And reach out to me. Find me on LinkedIn, find me on Twitter, and I'm happy to put you in touch with somebody who can help you and guide you through any challenge the challenge you're going through. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, and trust me, it's been wonderful having you. Those of us that are watching us on Tuesday, I'll have a powerful discussion. Somebody coming all the way from Germany. He has written a book about the history of Ghanaians in Germany, and he's coming to talk to us about the mindset of our people, both in diaspora and in Africa, and how can we change that narrative to build the Black history that we are going to be proud of. It's going to be an amazing discussion. Don't change the dial. This is your place for every Tuesday, Thursday, and on Saturday. We bring you thought-provoking discussions that can help us to really grow, unite, and to see the Black people that we want to see. It's been a long journey in terms of the challenges that we faced over the years, from slavery to colonization, to neo-colonization, to a level of disunity among ourselves, not really supporting our own, but supporting anything foreign. When you look at us, our economy as Black people is not strong compared to that of Asians or white people. But how can we build that formidable force for us to really achieve the Black people, the Black history that we are going to be proud of? We can always change the narrative, but changing it starts from what we do from today, because that is the only way we can see something different. And it starts from me and you. It is about time we stop blaming others and start blaming ourselves and started tailoring our life on a different path for us to get a different results. Because if we are getting the same results over time, it means that we are doing the same things. We can only get different results when you start doing things differently. And that is what Justin and his team are doing. Me, myself, I'm doing this on my own small way to really help change the narrative. My question is, what are you doing yourself? Let's come together and build the Black people, the Black history that we want to see. God richly bless everybody. I will see you on Tuesday, 8 p.m. GMT. And God richly bless you, Justin, for your time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.